At 4 a.m. on a spring day in the early 2020s, I was practicing one of the skills I thought I had perfected as a mom, trying to type with one hand while bouncing a crying baby with the other. I was just going back to work after the birth of my second child, desperate for someone to reassure me that I could do this. So, when I saw a headline where a feminist celebrity was offering the best business advice for women, I clicked. And then I read the advice. Get off your bleeping bleep and work. It seems like no one wants to work anymore. As I read those words with dark circles under my eyes, I knew something was wrong with the advice, that I should be working harder. And I knew it wasn't just the source, which was, by the way, Kim Kardashian, but hey, she'd sold a women's empowerment emoji pack on International Women's Day. I'm a woman of color who comes from a long line of women who've been expected to do too much. I've spent the last decade and a half researching the values that underlie feminist movements and criticizing what's often called white feminism. So I was already suspicious of an elite woman's claims about what all women should do. But I knew in that moment that the problem wasn't just the messenger, it was the message. An elite woman's solution for all women wasn't just a problem because she was a billionaire. It was a problem because it was no solution at all. In other ways, I could see that one of the ways that mainstream feminism was failing all women, and one of the reasons it was excluding poor women and women of color, were connected. And they were connected by a single idea. The tricky part is that the idea that's causing the problem is dear to many of our hearts. It's the idea that feminism is a movement for individual freedom. That idea is all around us. Feminism, we hear, is about women and gender-expansive people refusing to do what we're told, breaking boundaries, defining ourselves. As the Indian feminist Nivedita Menon puts it, becoming a feminist can feel like it's hitting the reveal formatting button on the document that's your life. Feminism can seem like it's just about rejecting how we're socialized. But I'm a philosopher, and my expertise lies in revealing the logical consequences of ideas. Many of the logical consequences of our ideas are unforeseen. You may have heard that chess players think not just about the next move, but about what'll happen several moves ahead. Philosophy's like this too. An idea that helps us make sense of one thing might turn into a problem a few steps down the line. I like to say, ideas have secret lives. Philosophy helps us expose them. And I think that the idea that feminism is about individual freedom has a secret life. It helps us make sense of the idea that gender as we know it feels and is constraining. But it also has downsides. One of these downsides is that it makes the idea that feminism is about hard work seem plausible in the first place. Stripped of its context, the idea that feminism is about working harder just seems silly. But add in the idea that feminism is about freeing us from being wives and mothers, and paid work takes on a different significance. The idea that patriarchy works by preventing women from working has a long history. It's part of the story you might have heard of as the origin of feminism, the story of stifled housewives in the 1960s. These women, who were largely upper middle class and white, because that's who was celebrated for being a homemaker and who had the economic security to be one, had a reason to associate liberation with a career. And we borrow from their ideas today. When we tell little girls that feminism is about not letting anyone tell you you can't be an astronaut, or when we coin phrases like the tyranny of low expectations. There's something right about both of these, but when they are sucking up all the oxygen in the feminist room, we're in trouble. The trouble is that women are tired. It's the 2020s, and I am not the only woman trying to bounce a baby and work at 4 a.m. In 1980, women estimated that their husbands did 31% of the housework, or the childcare. In 2000, they estimated it was 32%. A 2020 study found that an exhaustion gap between men and women, where it found women were 18% more burned out at work. Women do a whopping 2 more hours of housework a day. And women whose jobs demand long hours are 3 times as likely to get heart disease, cancer, or diabetes, likely because of the additional hours they spend working inside the home. This exhaustion gap is a new face of patriarchy, but it's one that the idea that feminism is about individual freedom doesn't help us diagnose. Philosophy tells us that one thing we want from our values is that they should help us diagnose injustices. But the idea that feminism is about individual freedom doesn't help us see the problem with the exhaustion gap for 3 reasons. First, the exhaustion gap is a gap. When women are doing 2 more hours of housework a day, men have advantages that women do not. Across the race and class spectrum, women are doing more, but getting less and mattering less. This just isn't something we can see if we focus only on individual freedom. That focus doesn't tell us to look at inequalities. It just asks us to think about whether people are doing what they want to do. Second, the idea that feminism is about freedom makes it seem like we can solve the problem by reducing constraints. But the real changes we would need are active financial support and a change in how we define work. The work women are doing just isn't defined as work. It's the work of cooking and cleaning. It's the work of caring for children and older adults. It's the mental load of making sure there's always toilet paper on that roll and making sure that the doctor's appointments are scheduled. As the economist Diane Elson puts it, women are not the world's most underutilized resource. We are the world's most overutilized one. And freeing people from much of the work that women are doing is literally impossible. As the philosopher Eva Kate puts it, humans are always going to need to be cared for. Dependency is just a deep, unavoidable fact about the human species. Yes, people of all genders, races, and classes should be doing this work. But we get there by trying to redistribute this work, not by trying to free people from it. There's a third reason that the idea that feminism is about freedom doesn't help us diagnose the exhaustion gap. It's that women are often choosing to work as hard as we do. From among the options that are available to us, doing the bulk of the work inside the home and piling more work on outside it is just what makes sense. And one of the reasons for this is simple. We live in a society where working outside the home is pretty much the only available path to economic security. This is perhaps the darkest side of freedom feminism. It makes it seem like women's overwork is a sign that feminism is succeeding. After all, we're making choices and doing what we want to do. And there's no one more likely to choose to work themselves into the ground than the women with the fewest race and class advantages. It's the women with the fewest options who have the best reasons to pile more and more paid work on top of unpaid care responsibilities. This is one of the deep connections between freedom feminism and the exclusion of poor women and women of color. The idea that feminism is about individual freedom just has no story to tell about the injustice of being worked into exhaustion. And then there's the irony that for many poor women and women of color, paid work isn't freedom from the home. It's work in someone else's home. When women like Kardashian, and women like me, because I'm a tenured professor, even if I'm no billionaire, achieve a level of freedom from housework and care work, the work doesn't stop needing to be done. The gaps left behind are filled by paid domestic workers, partly, who clean homes, care for children, and support elders and disabled people. These workers are over half women of color. They are twice as likely to be born outside of the United States, and they are 3 times as likely to be living below the poverty line, working for a median wage of $13.56 an hour. And doing work that's been expected to be done for free also means lacking basic labor protections like sick days and protection from sexual harassment. And these workers also usually have care responsibilities of their own that another, more vulnerable woman often has to meet. So freedom feminism is failing poor women and women of color in 2 ways. First, it's making a common job path for them, that of being a paid care or domestic worker, poorly paid and precarious. And second, it's making that exploitation look like it's liberation. After all, they're making choices and seeking careers. But this isn't where we had to end up, or what the future of feminism had to be. Instead of taking advice from Kim Kardashian or from a watered-down version of the ideas of 1960s housewives, I and we could be taking it from Johnny Tillman. Tillman, a divorced mom of 6 who founded the National Welfare Rights in the organization in the 1960s, thought that the way to make change for all women was to start from the bottom up. She introduced herself to mainstream feminist America by saying that the women on welfare were the canaries in the mine. As she put it, every woman is just one man away from welfare. And she added, our issues are important to all women. The right to a living wage for women's work, the right to life itself. The NWRO, a self-identified feminist organization whose members numbered in the tens of thousands, wasn't telling anyone to get up and work. That's because its members were already working. They were moms on public assistance raising their families. And Tillman's feminist dream wasn't to be freed from caregiving. She, like 90% of the NWRO's members, was a Black woman in America. She knew that part of the legacy of slavery had been being separated from your children. And she knew what it was to be caricatured as a bad mom. So the NWRO fought to revalue care work. They fought to make America see moms, especially poor Black moms, be seen as doing socially valuable labor. That meant greater welfare benefits. It meant a universal basic income, regardless of whether society valued the work you did. It meant a right to rest and pleasure, and it meant fair wages and working conditions for daycare workers. These are policies, but I think the real lesson of the NWRO is a lesson about our values. It's a lesson about the positive vision that can ground a feminism that truly is, as Bell Hooks famously put it, for everyone. That vision is about opposition to hierarchy. The NWRO rejected the hierarchy between men and women that said that men's work mattered and women's didn't. And it rejected the race and class hierarchy that called affluent white women who cared for their children full-time homemakers and poor black ones who did drains on the system. And they understood that racism and sexism were structures and hierarchies that affected entire groups of people. And that the way to make change for the entire group was to focus on the activism and policies that would benefit the most vulnerable. Change was never going to trickle down, but it might trickle up or across society. Years after the decline of the NWRO, the philosopher Bell Hooks gave a name to the values that oriented activism like Tillman's. Feminism was about ending oppression. Oppression was not the same thing as lack of individual freedom or choice. Oppression was fundamentally a system of hierarchy that said some entire groups of people mattered more. And the idea that feminism is about resisting hierarchy has implications far beyond the issue of care work. The idea that there's a hierarchy that deems some people bad parents has been central to today's reproductive justice movement, which advocates for a right to parent. That right includes, yes, the ability to say no to parenthood one doesn't want in the form of things like abortion access, but also active supports for parenting, like assisted reproductive technologies, gun-free schools, and prenatal care. And the idea that feminism is not about wanting to be freed from each other has laid the groundwork for feminisms that see rootedness in culture and community as sources of strength. This has been crucial for many women of color, especially Indigenous women and women from the Global South, who have long fought for feminisms that don't drive a wedge between us and our communities. I began this talk by saying that ideas had secret lives. That also means they're gateways of possibility into worlds we haven't imagined yet. If you're a feminist, somebody's probably told you at some point not to settle. But our choice today isn't just about whether to settle in our personal lives. It's about whether to settle for a feminism that is working for almost no one and leaving many poor women and women of color behind. Now is a great moment not to settle.